Can we have our friend from India to mute your mic as we start? Once again, can we have our counterpart from India to mute your mic? Mr. Dharmacharya. Okay, so we have the mic. So we shall start. Kuzombola, namaste, and good morning to all our esteemed guests. My name is Sangeet Chofal, and I am delighted to be anchoring this virtual tour of some of the most sacred and iconic sites of the Buddhist circuit in India. The event is co-hosted by the Embassy of India and the Ministry of Tourism. We are also privileged to have His Eminence, the Tolopan and Honorable Foreign Minister of Bhutan amongst us on this occasion. So let us get ready to go on a spiritual journey, spiritual virtual journey. Bodhgaya, Sarnath, Saravasti, Rajgir, Kushinagar, and some of the places that all of us from Bhutan look forward to pay a visit. And I would recommend each of these places as a must-see, a must-visit, at least once in one's lifetime. I have had the privilege to visit most of these places myself. And Mahabhuti Temple in Bodhgaya just resonates with a sense of spirituality, strength, and a profoundness, a place worthy of enlightenment. The ruins of Nalanda still reverberates of Buddhist scholarly spirits. We will have two renowned scholars, Dharmacharya Shantum Seth and Professor Ravindra Path, who will navigate the itinerary of this virtual tour of these historic places that were touched by the spirituality and the life of Lord Buddha several thousands of years back. The good news is that while we will experience the magic of these sites digitally today, we will be able to visit these places soon from mid-November 2021, when India opens up international tourists on regular flights, while group tourism on chartered flight is already on. So let us commence this program, and may I invite Ambassador of India to Bhutan, Your Excellency, Ms. Ruchira Kamboj, to deliver the opening remarks. You may, from your own seat.
Thank you so much, Sangi, for that excellent introduction. First and foremost, in greeting everybody in India from Bhutan, I'd also like to say that today's program is indeed very special. It is from the heart. And before I make my points, I'd like to thank some people who have made it possible. First and foremost is the Honorable Foreign Minister of Bhutan, who's sitting to my right. Thank you so much, Excellency. I do remember when I was thinking of this program, which indeed has been a labor of love, so to speak, I had first approached the foreign minister and I had asked him, what do you think of the idea? And he had encouraged me and he had said, it's a wonderful idea, go ahead with it. And I had asked him, Excellency, would you also be present on that occasion? That will make it truly special. And he had said, of course I will be. Now, with that kind of support and encouragement, why would I not go forward and push my government to do something as fantastic as what we are going to do today? Thank you, Excellency. My gratitude also to my colleague from the Ministry of Tourism, Joint Secretary Rakesh Kumar. He has been stolid like a rock in supporting us through the curation progress. Indeed, it has been a labor of love because we've gone through quite a few iterations. And I think today what everyone in Bhutan will see will indeed be a fantastic spiritual journey, as Sange puts it. So thank you so much to the Ministry of Tourism also. And finally, I will express my deepest gratitude to three people, to the experts from India, Dharmacharya Shantum Seth. He's going to take us through this wonderful journey. Thank you so much. Having heard him, spoken to him, I think we are in the best of hands. And also Professor Ravindra Path, who's going to speak to the connect between Nalanda and Bhutan. Thank you so much, Professor Pant. I don't think anybody else could have done it. We are looking forward to that segment also. And my gratitude also to His Eminence Lopin Karma, to the Shugla Lopin, as he's called in Bhutan. Thank you very much for being here. Your presence means tremendously to us that you are representing the monastic body and you're here today. And of course, to the wonderful audience, because this program is a wonderful mix of some physical, here, some of us here in Thimphu, and the rest of us in Thimphu. I would say, my team tells me, we are joined today by about 3,000 people from across Bhutan, mostly youngsters, and they are eager with their questions also, and everybody's looking forward to this event. I'd like to very quickly make two brief points also. First and foremost, as everybody knows, India is the land of Lord Buddha, without a doubt. And very recently, at the United Nations General Assembly, our Prime Minister has said, and put this across very beautifully when he said, Buddh, not Yudh, is the legacy of India. And I thought that was so beautifully put from a world platform. And indeed, I think the values of peace, non-violence, care, compassion are ingrained in the hearts of every Indian. And many, many centuries after Siddhartha Gautama, India won her freedom from British rule through a peaceful and non-violent struggle, led by one of modern India's greatest sons, Mahatma Gandhi, who is indeed the apostle of peace, non-violence, compassion, and care. I think that is very important to stress and emphasize. And I think many people here in Bhutan would know, but I would like to stress on this, that our Buddhist legacy finds its way also in the Indian tricolor, in the Indian flag. The Dharmacharya is beautifully represented in the Indian flag. And I think it stands for movement, progress, momentum, all of which is reflected in the new India of today. Also, I think when you visit the Indian Parliament, none of us can miss the magnificent mural of the Dharmacharya Pravartana, which greets us in the Indian Parliament. So I think I would definitely like to take this opportunity to emphasize how much of Lord Buddha's values are part of the Indian heritage, culture, and ethos. The second thing I did want to mention was that Lord Buddha is without any directions, without any boundaries. We all know his story. Lord Buddha lived most of his life in the eastern parts of India, mainly Uttar Pradesh and Bihar. But Buddhism spread from India to South Asia, to Southeast Asia, to East Asia, and of course to Bhutan. The very inextricable linkage between Guru Padmasambhava, Guru Rinpoche, as he's known in Bhutan, and India. And I think, to me personally, the most beautiful part of Buddhism is its simplicity. Personally, I think there is nothing in life that cannot be answered through Buddhism. The fundamental essence of Buddhism enables us to, I think, deal with many vicissitudes of life. That said, I will leave the rest to the experts, but I would also like to end with two important announcements. First and foremost, we are going to conduct, as the embassy, with the fullest support of the Ministry of Tourism, a nationwide quiz competition across Bhutan on Buddhism. And we are very grateful to the royal government that we have their support in this. I'm told that some 21 schools across the 20 districts of Bhutan are gearing up for this quiz competition. We too at the embassy are gearing up. And just yesterday, our Joint Secretary from Tourism gave us the good news that the two winners will get to travel to India for full 5 days on a fully sponsored visit to any of the 3-4 Buddhist destinations of their choice that our experts will show to us today. So I think that's so wonderful. And I'm told that aside from the full hospitality, they are also throwing in the services of a tourist guide. So I think it's going to be a very special visit to India. And we at the embassy are so very excited that we are a tiny part of this process. The other announcement really is Kushinagar Airport. It was in the news. I think all of us know that it's now an international airport. Our Prime Minister has inaugurated the airport just a couple of days back. And I think that's wonderful news for Bhutan also. The foreign minister of Bhutan also happens to be the head of tourism in Bhutan. Probably he's the only one who can get Druk Air to fly direct to Kushinagar at least once a week or once in a fortnight. I think that would be wonderful for everybody to see Lord Buddha's final resting place, which is now on the international circuit. And I will close by wishing all of you here in Bhutan a wonderful spiritual journey through these sites, and also in advance to wish all of you a wonderful Labab Dichen. I think tomorrow for our Indian guests is the descending day of Lord Buddha, a day when we honor our mothers, our parents. And I will now hand back the podium to Sangye. Over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam Ambassador. Wonderfully put. Can I now invite Your Excellency, Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs, Nimbo Nanitpaji, for your address.
Plus, Tsulole Berimbuji, then Ambassador Ruchira Kamboj, officials from the Ministry of Tourism in India, experts and friends from India, Dashos and Ams, ladies and gentlemen, Kuzambo and good morning. I would like to thank Her Excellency, Ambassador Ruchira, and the Ministry of Tourism Government of India for inviting me to address this event on a tour of the Buddhist circuit in India. I am very pleased to attend this special event, which is part of the ongoing celebrations of Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav India at 75. And as Ambassador Ruchira mentioned, two of us, we discussed this in detail. And I really thought that it was a very wonderful idea, given the pandemic situation and where it is so difficult for many Bhutanese who would like to go and still not be able to go. And even after the pandemic, I think that many Bhutanese who do not have the resources and who will not be able to go will have this opportunity to at least see it virtually. And again, as Ambassador Ruchira already mentioned, India is home to some of the most sacred Buddhist sites and also home of great religious traditions in the world. As a Buddhist nation, we deeply appreciate the government of India's continued efforts in preserving and promoting Buddhism through initiatives such as developing Buddhist pilgrimage sites and organizing conferences. These efforts ensure that the Buddhist heritage sites and legacies are preserved for future generations. The Buddhist circuit in India is an important pilgrimage destination for millions of Buddhists from around the world, including Bhutan. And every year, thousands of monks and devotees from Bhutan visit pilgrimage sites in India, particularly Bodh Gaya, Nalanda, and Rajgir. I'm sure many Bhutanese are waiting for the pandemic to be over so that they can continue their spiritual pilgrimages in India. Buddhist values and traditions permeate every aspect of the Bhutanese culture and ethos. Buddhism plays a pivotal role in the Bhutanese way of life, influencing nearly everything from the arts and crafts to the system of governance, folk dances, and architectural styles. The excellent relationship that exists between Bhutan and India draws its strengths from our shared cultural heritage and close linkage in Buddhism since time immemorial. The Vajrayana Buddhism practiced in Bhutan is traced back to India. Since the arrival of Buddhism in Bhutan, many great Buddhist masters from India traveled to our country and blessed the land and its people. From the time when Guru Padma Sambhava came to Bhutan in the 8th century, Buddhism has irrevocably shaped the country's history and destiny. It is for these reasons that historically, Bhutanese referred to India as Jagar Phabi Yu, which could be translated as India, the land of the enlightened. So India is naturally a mecca for thousands of Bhutanese who travel to sacred Buddhist sites in Bihar and in Uttar Pradesh. It is my firm belief that Buddhism, which is our shared spiritual heritage, is an invaluable aspect of the abiding and age-old relationship between Bhutan and India, and continues to play an important role in maintaining and promoting friendship between the peoples of our two countries. I hope and pray that Buddhism will continue to flourish and spread the timeless and profound values of compassion, loving kindness, peace, and selfless service preached by Lord Buddha. As a devout Buddhist, I look forward to the virtual tour of the Buddhist circuit in India, featuring important places associated with Lord Buddha. And I look forward to hearing from the two experts. Thank you and Tashtilera.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. We will now start the presentation and the interactive session on the Buddhist circuit of India by Dharmacharya Shantum Seth.
Dear friends, can you hear me? Is it okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. Dear friends, thank you so much for inviting me to share about the Buddhist circuit in India. Thank you to the ambassador, to the foreign minister, and of course the joint secretary of the Ministry of Tourism. But I must say, as I said to the ambassador and the joint secretary, I'm rather humbled to be sharing about the Buddha Dharma with friends from the Kingdom of Bhutan, where the official religion is Buddhism. It's a bit like sharing Islam with friends in the Kingdom of Jordan. But the Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, came from India, and the source of, and even Guru Padmasambhava taught in Nalanda. So I guess we have some claim in a way to share, but I thought I'll focus much more on the historical Buddha for that reason. And then my friend Dr. Pant will be sharing more about Nalanda and the linkages with Bhutan, Guru Padmasambhava, and also Xuanzang, the famous Chinese pilgrim of the 7th century. I'm going to do this in the form of a PowerPoint or like slides. So I will show you slides as we go along. And then I will just share in the background. So if you don't mind, I will, I should also say that I'm very honored that there are many wonderful people listening into this, friends from the National Library and Archives and others who I know. So they're great scholars in Bhutan who are listening into this. So thank you very much. And I'd be happy to share and discuss and have questions afterwards. I'm going to now share my screen so that I can share. So I'd like to start with just one sound of the bell. This is a meditation bell, and I use this as a way of just coming back to my breath and centering myself. And you could do the same thing, just becoming aware of your breath. If you want, you can put your hand in your belly and just feel your breath, just 3 breaths. So, friends, as we know, the Buddha in the Mahaparinirvana Sutta actually mentioned that it would be important that his students visit the 4 important sites associated with his life, where he was born, where he passed away, where he gave his first teachings, and where he was awakened. And as we are all disciples of the Buddha, students of the Buddha, who have all taken refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, which is a common thread amongst all Buddhists, I feel that it is a wonderful pilgrimage that we can make to the places of the Buddha. And I think it's not just the outer journey that's important, but it's the inner journey. It's really when you go to a place where you're not habituated, different seeds in your consciousness are touched. And we get to know a lot more about ourselves, about who we are. And also, when we read the suttas, we meditate at these places, we understand the great mysteries of life and death, and the rather important questions of life, which the Buddha was also grappling with in his time, which haven't really changed 2,600 years later. As the moderator was mentioning, there are places in India which are classical Buddhist sites where the Buddha would have, we know the Buddha would have spent time. Lumbini, where he was born, Kapilavastu, where he spent his childhood, Bodh Gaya, where he awakened, sort of in the southern part. And then, of course, as I mentioned, Kushinagar, and Sarnath, but also there's Rajgir, there's Vaishali, where the first nuns were ordained, and Shravasti, where he spent 24 of his rain retreats that gave many, many of his teachings. And geographically, you'll see the map, you'll see that, of course, this is southwest of Bhutan in the Gangetic Plains. Now, the story, of course, is that the Buddha's mother, Maya Devi, had a dream, and in the dream, a white elephant placed a pink lotus in her womb. And when she got this dream interpreted, it is said that the interpreter said that she will have a child who will be either a great teacher or a great king. She was very happy about this, and 10 months later, she is going back to her Maike, to her mother's home, to have the child. And there's a beautiful garden, a Lumbini garden on the way between the Kolya kingdom, the Shakya kingdom. And she feels a labor pain come on. It's probably been a tough ride in a bullock cart or a horse cart. And she walks a few steps and holds onto a tree and gives birth. Now, the miracle, I would say that the birth of any child is a miracle. And but the causes and conditions at that time allowed somebody like Siddhartha Gautam to be born at that moment. And because of his teachings later, people became his disciples and students. And so Emperor Ashoka, nearly 300 years later after that date of birth, came to this place that was 20 years after his own coronation and put a pillar to mark the place where the Buddha had been born. And in it, he put an inscription in the Brahmi script saying that he called himself King Piyadasi, beloved of the gods, visited this place in the 20th year of his after his coronation, and put this pillar to mark the place where the Buddha was born, but also exempted the local people of an eighth of their tax as an honor because the Buddha had been born. Now, we don't know what the Buddha looked like. There's no photograph, of course, but not even a painting of what the Buddha would have looked like. But we can surmise, and the Buddha himself was not very keen that we worshipped a form. But when I study the politics and the sort of racial politics of the time, I would say he looked a bit like that boy who's got a nice smile, with his white shirt, standing there. And we don't know, we know quite a lot of stories about his childhood. We know that he had a deep compassion. This famous story about the swan where the bird has been shot by his cousin Devdutt, and he picks up the bird, heals the bird, and then argues that he's the one who should be given the bird because he's giving it life. And Devdutt, of course, a Kshatriya, a warrior, says it should be his bird because he shot it. Fortunately, Siddhartha Gautam actually wins the argument in that particular case. Other stories, he then marries when he's about, actually an important story is when he's 9 years old, which is about the age of this boy, I think, is that he has his first meditation. And that's an important story because this links into his later awakening. And then when he's about 16, he marries a young woman called Yashodhara, and they live what we think is probably quite a happy life, a married life. But I think this young man has a sort of rather contemplative nature, and he's always wondering about these existential questions. And the story is that one day he goes out and he sees a person who's died, an old person, a sick person, and he has these questions about, is this the reality for all of us? Is this suffering, this dis-ease, a condition for all of us? And he sees then a shramana, a wanderer, a spiritual seeker, and he says, maybe I should do this. And so He then leaves home at the age of 29, soon after his child is born, Rahul. And I think he may have probably made a pact with his wife that once the child is born, an heir to the throne, maybe he could then leave. And I don't think he leaves. I see this a bit like a love story where she sees he needs to do this. He needs to find out these and go on this quest, as it were. And so he goes off on his journey, and he goes south to meet some of the finest teachers. In this depiction which you're seeing, there's Kantaka, his horse, and Channa, his charioteer, and he's saying bye-bye to them and then setting off across the river, the Anupama River, down into going south. And he goes to the famous places at that time, places like Vaishali, Rajgir, where there were great teachers. Vaishali was the first republic in the world. Rajgir was the kingdom of or the capital of the kingdom, the Magadha kingdom. So he then meets, we know two teachers by name that he met. One was called Alara Kalama, and Alara, as far as we understand, was teaching a very deep form of concentration, yogic concentration. And the Buddha got to that stage of awake understanding, but found that this was not a way for awakening. Once he came out of that concentrative state, he was back to square one. And then he studied with Udaka Ramaputra, and he taught type of Upanishadic teachings. And again, he grasped what Udaka was trying to teach and felt this was not the way of liberation. He then wanders on, tries all these ascetic practices, which were also being propagated at the time by Mahavir, the famous teacher, also a former prince who'd started the Jain religion. And in that teaching, the feeling was that if there's something like a soul, an Atma, and the body is an impediment to liberation, and we must actually overcome the body. In a way, it's a bit like seeing wet firewood. You can't burn fire with a wet firewood, so you have to dry it out. So it's a very same sort of idea with the practice of asceticism. And this wanderer, Gautama, from the Shakya clan, he really practiced so deeply that he describes it. He says that when I touch my stomach, I can touch my backbone. My head is like a shriveled gourd, and my buttocks are like the hooves of a horse, and my ribs are like the rafters of a dilapidated building. And he's really starving, and he eats what is just in the hollow of a hand. That's also so interesting and not so very, eats his own excreta, for example, as an experiment of survival. But then he practiced, and then he decides that one day he's by the river and he feels a gentle breeze on his face, and he remembers the time when he was 9 years old when he had a meditation, and he sort of recalls that, and he says, well, this may not be the way that I've been trying, and he decides the next morning to go and eat. So he bathes in the river and starts walking towards the town, and he collapses. He is so weak, he collapses under a banyan tree. And a young girl called Sujata is carrying some kheer, some rice and milk pudding, and to offer to the tree gods in gratitude to a boon that she's got. And she sees this man dying and just gently sits down and offers him a little bit on his lips. And slowly the Buddha revives and he sits up. He's not the Buddha, of course, at that time. He's still the wanderer. And he then starts talking to her. Now, he's been practicing with 5 other ascetics in the cave. And at that point, these other 5 see him eating, and even worse, by talking to this young girl. And they leave.
I apologize for interrupting. Are you changing the slides?
Yes.
Are you changing your slides, your presentation slides? Because we are only seeing the first page of it.
I am changing the slides, yes.
You are changing slides. We're not receiving on our end on our screen.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Fix that.
So because I did try it before. I'm going to go back, escape. I'm so sorry. This is
Oh, there we have it. Okay.
So I have been going along these. So I started with this. Did you see this one?
We just saw the title of your slide.
That's it. Okay.
We weren't able to see the rest of your slides. So as we continue, I guess now.
I'm so sorry. So okay. So I'm going to just let me see if I do a new share. And then I start again. Now, are you seeing it?
You're just seeing the first page. You might have to scroll down.
Can you scroll down?
We only see the
Seth?
first slide.
Are you seeing it now?
Can you scroll down?
I scroll down. Okay, I can scroll down. Yes. So if I do this, then I do this. Then you can see it. Right?
Yes.
Okay, so you're gonna have to click on
You have to click on
slide
the.
at the top.
And then you see the whole background to this thing also. You don't see just the slide, you see everything, is it?
Yes.
Aha. And just let me try once again. So I'm putting this now. And now, are you seeing the next one?
We are seeing the slide now.
And the next one?
The next one we're not seeing. We're just only stuck at the particular slide that you had picked.
Oh no. Okay, that's not very good news. Okay.
We're seeing the map now.
Okay, I'm sorry. Then I think
I think you can leave it at this mode, Mr. Seth, and go forward.
Yeah. Okay. So this is this is the quote from the Buddha in the Mahabhuti Sutta about visiting the places of pilgrimage. This is about the mapping of the Middle Land, where we mentioned the places. This is the geographical map showing that it's in the Gangetic Plain southwest of Bhutan. This is about the dream. This is the pillar in Lumbini. This is the inscription, which was deciphered by James Princep in 1837. This is the children, and I was saying that this young man is probably what the Buddha looked like. This is the stupa at Kapilavastu, where some relics were found, and which I'll be talking about later. And this is the renunciation. And now we have come to the ascetic time and the 6 years between 29 and 35, where he tried the different practices. And now he's having this kheer from Sujata. Is that okay? Is this a better way to show it?
Yes, I think now we can see the slides, so probably this would be better.
Thank you for interrupting me, because I felt I was of course seeing the slide, and sorry for the technical issues. So in fact this depiction is from the Bhutan temple, the Royal Bhutan temple in Bodh Gaya, which has beautiful wall murals in relief, and Sujata offering the kheer to the Buddha, the emaciated Buddha. But if you go to the village, you'll also see this young girl who's about the same age as that Sujata, still in the village, and her name is Sujata. So in a sort of interesting way, when you go on pilgrimage, you're not just visiting a place which was linked 2,600 years ago, but you're visiting places which are living today. You're crossing the river, you're sitting in the cave where the Buddha sat, you're meeting the people he met, and even seeing the way of plowing, which was happening 2,600 years ago. And that's important because you can actually see the context. The Buddha's teachings came out of a context. It didn't come out of nowhere. It was always in relation to what he was seeing or learning at that time. And there's a stupa, which is now there to commemorate this important event of Sujata offering the kheer. Now, after this, the Buddha then crosses the river and comes to where we can now see the Mahabhuti Temple. There was a tree there at the time, and he sits under the tree. And this is where he starts contemplating on his own what he's been really grappling with, is how to overcome suffering, how to overcome this dis-ease of life. He sits under this tree, and now there's a sandstone type of throne there, which is called the Vajrasan, and we often call this place the navel of the earth. We call Bodh Gaya the navel of the earth, and it's a wonderful image where we can see that the whole world, and especially the Buddhist world, emanates from this one place. When he's sitting there, of course, young children, local people come, and one of the people he meets is a young cattle herder, and this boy offers him grass, this kusa grass. So he makes a cushion out of it and sits on the cushion under the tree. And he sits there for many weeks. Some people say 7 weeks. And he contemplates things. He contemplates what he's seeing around him, and he looks up at the Bodhi tree. This is the tree you can see you're sitting under the tree looking up, and he starts looking at the tree as a sort of teacher in a way. And when you look at the leaf, a leaf like this, he would, and this is the leaf here actually, it's the Bodhi leaf right next to me. When I look at a leaf, I can look very deeply into this leaf and see that in the leaf is the sunshine, is the earth, is the cloud, is the rain. Everything in the cosmos is in this leaf. And if you took one of those elements out of the leaf, this leaf would not exist as it is. This is the sort of insight that the Buddha was having of non-self, the understanding that there's nothing that has intrinsic existence in of itself. And what we now term as anatma, there's nothing which has an independently existing entity. So when we look at a leaf or we look at anything, everything is because of conditioned reality. Causes and conditions cause this leaf to manifest, or anything else to manifest, including ourselves. This is the great insight of the Buddha, and he sits there 7 weeks, enjoys himself, and then at one point he thinks, "Oh, I'm going to go and teach." Now, before that, I just want to show you an important place in Bodh Gaya, which was alluded to by the moderator, which is the Royal Bhutan Monastery in Bodh Gaya. And actually, many Buddhist cultures have monasteries there, and many Buddhist countries have monasteries there. And it's a wonderful place because when we want to experience the different flavors and cultures of the Buddha Dharma, we can just walk across from the Bhutanese embassy, Bhutanese monastery, to the Japanese monastery, or to the Thai monastery, which are next door on two sides. And you can get a very different flavor of sort of Mahayana, Vajrayana, and Theravada Buddhism, all within about 100 meters of each other. Now, the Buddha does think, who is he going to teach this to? And this is actually an act of great compassion, because he could have just carried on happily on his own. But he then thinks, well, who will understand? And he thinks of his old teachers, Alara and Udaka, and he meets an Ajivaka. Ajivakas are determinists. And he asks him, do you know Udaka? Do you know Alara? He says, yes, they both died recently. And then he asks, who are the people, do you know where the 5 ascetics are? And he says, they're in the deer park near Varanasi and in Sarnath. So he decides to go there to teach. So it takes him about 2 weeks to go to get there. When he gets there, they first of all, of course, don't even want to recognize him, but his presence is so strong that it more or less involuntarily get up, offer him water, offer him a seat. And then he sits down and he says, listen, and he starts teaching them the middle way, the 4 noble truths, and the 8-fold path. And this is the classic teachings of the Buddha on the universality of suffering, the causes of suffering, the extinction of suffering, and the path leading to liberation. And I feel it's very important to understand that in the 3rd noble truth, when we say the extinction of suffering, we also say the presence of joy, because you can't have something, you can't say there's no light, there's no light, there's darkness, there's no darkness, there's light. So you have to have one. If one is not there, then the other is there. So this is important that this practice of the Buddha is a practice of joy, practice of happiness, practice of liberation. And these teachings are going on now. I go on pilgrimage. I've been going on pilgrimage since, I was born. I spent my childhood in Patna, but then I've been going there for more than 30 years on pilgrimage every year. It's a wonderful practice, and we can study and teach as we sit in the park, just like the Buddha did. And the ambassador alluded to the Dharmacharya Parivartana. There's a museum, a site museum very close by, and some beautiful statues and other artwork over there, including the national emblem of India, which is the lion capital of Emperor Ashoka, which is found on a pillar, on the Ashokan pillar in Sarnath. And as the ambassador mentioned, the wheel in the center was what is taken for the national flag of India. The Buddha then goes back to Rajgir. He's befriended the king of that time, King Bimbisar, and when King Bhimsar greets him and he listens to his teachings, King Bhimsar is very happy. He said, I had 5 wishes. They've all been fulfilled. One was to be king. One was to be able to be visited by a awakened person. One was to be able to receive him. One was to be able to hear his teachings, and one was to be able to understand those teachings. And all those 5 wishes have been fulfilled. And then he offers him this land, which is now called Venuvan. It was Venuvan at that time, the bamboo grove in Rajgir. And it's interesting that in 2018, to mark the 50th year of diplomatic relations with Bhutan, the current chief minister of Bihar offered land to Bhutan, and now to the J. Kempo when he was there, and now there's a Bhutanese monastery also coming up. And it's interesting, the word Bihar, of course, comes from the word Vihara, which is the dwelling place for monastics. The Buddha walked everywhere. For 45 years of his mission, he walked everywhere. And one of the wonderful ways to do this pilgrimage is to walk, and to walk in the footsteps of the Buddha and really feel with each step that we are arriving, and doing this in a walking meditation style. It's one of the great joys of life for me to do this every year. And many others do this too. Here, a group of monastics from Thailand who are walking in the Jetta Grove. Now, the Jetta Grove, or the Jettavan in Shravasti, is where the Buddha spent 24 of his rain retreats. He would go there regularly every year, and anybody who wanted to study with him knew that they could come there to meet with him. And the land here was bought by a man called Anath Pindika in a very interesting way, where he wants to buy this land from the Prince Jetta, and the prince is completely disinterested in giving this land. And then he finally, out of frustration, pretty much says, give some ridiculous price, like to cover the land with gold. And Anath Pindika says, done. And Prince Jetta can't rescind because the lawyers say you've named a price, now you have to sell, or the lawyers of the time. So that's how this land was bought. And this is wonderful land. This Jetta Grove, and there was another East Grove monastery. The Buddha gave more teachings there than anywhere else. The teachings like the full awareness of breathing, the teachings given to the sick, the better way to catch a snake, the teachings to the white-clad disciples, all sorts of teachings were given there. And for me, the full awareness of breathing is one of my great practices of using that as a practice of the 16 methods of breathing towards liberation, from calming to liberation. This is where the Buddha stayed, supposedly. This place is called Gandhikurti. It means a fragrant hut, and this is where the Buddha would have met people every day, and he walked from here to Kusambakuti, which is close by. Now you can imagine the Buddha was a great walker. He's sitting in Shravasti and talks to Anand, his attendant, and says, "Oh, let's go and watch sunset at Vulture Peak." Now it's like it's next door. It's not. It's about more than 500 kilometers away. And he gets up and starts walking. And I worked out that he probably walked about 10 kilometers a day. So it probably took him nearly 2 months to get from Shravasti to Vulture Peak. And this is important because Vulture Peak is where, when we sit there and watch the sunset, we're really watching the same sunset at a different time as the Buddha watched. And if we really look deeply, we can look with Buddha eyes to see what was the Buddha seeing. And if we can transform our own eyes into Buddha eyes, that is a wonderful practice we can do. And I know in Vajrayana, that is the sort of practices we can develop. And so the Buddha sat there, watched the sunset, and then we know the Mahaparinirvana Sutta, which is the last journey of the Buddha, starts there. He then moves to north of the river, north of the Ganga River, to Vaishali, where he stays for the rain retreat. He's not very well. There's a conversation he has where he says, my body is a bit like a cart being bandaged together and kept together. And he announces his passing away. And he goes, and this lion capital there is showing the direction he took, the north. And as I mentioned earlier, this was where also the first nuns were ordained. He moves north to a place called Kesaria, where there's a huge stupa. It was the world's largest stupa until an earthquake knocked the top of it off. And this is supposedly where the Buddha gives his bowl to the people of Vaishali who've been following him. But as importantly, he also gives the Kalama Sutta here. The Kalama Sutra is the sutra really relevant to our times. It's to do with the spirit of free inquiry, where people ask the Buddha, they say, this teacher says this teacher says this teacher says, who do we believe? And he says, don't believe your teachers, don't believe the text, don't believe the majority. You practice. If the practice brings you happiness, joy, liberation, and well-being for others, then it is a good practice. So this is a wonderful type of teaching to our time. He then moves on further north and goes to Kushinagar. This is the place where he's going to pass away. It's one of the capitals of the Malla kingdom. And in the distance, you see the Sala tree, and in the foreground, you see the Sita Ashok tree. In the Chinese canon, they say the Buddha was born under Sita Ashok and born under Sal. But in both canons, they say that, in the Pali canon, they say that, and Chinese canon, they say that he was born and died. In the Pali canon, they say that he was born and died under the Sal tree. And in the Chinese canon, they say he was born under Sita Ashok and died under Sal tree. And this is the Sal tree in blossom. It's supposed to be in bloom when the Buddha passes away. And there's all the flowers are falling on his body. And he's lying there and he's looking out at the sunset. And he asks this question. And he says, of the gathered people, he says, is there anything unclear about the teachings to overcome suffering and attain liberation? And there's silence. And so he says, ask, don't say your teacher was there and you didn't ask. And again, there's silence. And then he says, if you're embarrassed, ask your neighbor to ask. Again, there's silence, which means the teachings are well understood. And then he closes his eyes and he opens them and says something which translates to all conditioned reality is subject to decay. Strive on diligently. Essentially meaning that everything is impermanent, keep up the practice. And then he closes his eyes and moves into what we call Mahaparinirvana. This is it's a difficult moment for everyone when you know your teacher is passing, and yet, some people react differently. Some beat the ground, some sit in meditation, some are sad, and 7 days later, his body is carried to the Mukta Bandhana Stupa, which is close by, and cremated. So this is where the stupa is now to commemorate that. At the end of the cremation, there's a Brahmin called Dona, and people start coming to try and get the relics of the Buddha. And there's going to be a little war over the relics. And Dona comes up with this wonderful idea that let's distribute the relics, and he divides them into 8 parts. And so that they go into different countries, and these relics were found in Kapilavastu in the excavation between 71 and 73, and they're now in the National Museum and they were found in these soapstone caskets. So I thought we would just pause at this point with the relics, and I would just invite the bell and, just to contemplate, in a sense, what the Buddha means to us as a person. And, is as close you can get to the historical Buddha is through his relics, through his bones. So we just sit in silence for about 3 sounds the bell and just focus in internally on what the Buddha would mean to us, the historical Buddha. So thank you very much. If we have questions later, if people want questions afterwards, you can always write to me. I'd be happy to, especially the students, if you'd like to, carry on, develop a conversation. I'm very happy to do that. And after this, I will pass the baton, as it were, to Dr. Pant, who will be sharing on Nalanda and continuing the conversation, and we'll come back for some questions and answers. Thank you very much. And Dr. Pant.
Chronology of Buddhist life, as well as wonderful anecdotes in between. I would now like to invite Professor Ravindra Path to talk about the linkage between Nalanda and Bhutan. May please.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Most venerable Sangha members, excellencies, dignitaries, participants, students, Dhamma friends, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning, Namami to all of you. I am thankful to the Embassy of India in Bhutan and the Ministry of Tourism of India for giving me opportunities to share my views with my fellow Bhutanese people. India and Bhutan, the two nations, besides being the neighboring countries, have a very intimate relation since the ancient time, linkage through Buddhism, the practice of Dharma. Before discussing the theme of my presentation, that is linkage between Nalanda and Bhutan, I would like to emphasize on the significance of two terms, that is history and culture, in the development of a nation, and that too a Dharma nation. Friends, it is rightly said that history and culture are interdependent. They cannot exist and prosper in isolation. Metaphorically speaking, they are the two essential parts of a tree where history is the root and culture is the fruit. Culture without history has no root, whereas history without culture bears no fruit. A nation is like a tree. If it has no history, it will never survive and grow in totality. And if it has no culture, it will never develop and progress in a holistic way. A nation with history and culture alone is a long living, flourishing tree that can weather any storm and withstand any climate. Fortunately, both India and Bhutan have rich historic and cultural links based on the foundation of Dharma. Friends, in my presentation, I will briefly discuss the contribution of ancient Nalanda University, that is Nalanda Mahavihara, its link with Bhutan through Acharya Padmasambhava of Nalanda. And I'll also show you in the concluding part a new establishment which has developed near the Nalanda Ancient University. It is called Xuanzang Memorial, which is dedicated to Master Xuanzang, who was responsible and, based on his travelogue, the Nalanda University, ancient Nalanda University was explored and excavated. And finally, I'll talk about Revalsar in Himachal Pradesh, which is related to Venerable Padmasambhava. In the present site of Nalanda, is situated about 100 kilometers southwest of Patna, the capital state of Bihar. It is about 15 kilometers from Rajgir, the ancient capital of the famous Magad Empire. The archaeological site was declared as a World Heritage Site by UNESCO on January 2009. The ancient site was explored, as I said, on the basis of the travelogue of Venerable Trensang. Coming to the name Nalanda, there are various views. The local tradition explains that Nalanda came from a Naga serpent deity in Indian tradition whose name was Nalanda. Some scholars give an alternative meaning, saying it is Na Alang Da, that means charity without intermission, insatiable in offering. Nalanda is referred as Nalendra and is likely synonymous of Nala or Nalaka grammar found in the Tibetan literature. Some scholars say that the name Nalanda came from Nalang, which is lotus, and the place had lots of, in the ponds, there were a lot of Nalang lotuses, which is also a symbol of knowledge. And Da means to give. That means the place where knowledge is given. The earliest account of Nalanda at the time of Buddha is available in Pali literature. You know, here in the slide I am giving the suttas where the Nalanda has been found. The word Nalanda and the teachings were also given in this place. It mentions Nalanda along with Rajgir, which was the capital of the powerful Magadhan Empire ruled by King Bimbisara and later by his son Ajatashatru. It was then a prosperous and developed town situated near Rajgir. Nalanda and Rajgir together formed an important area of Buddha's Dharmacharya. Buddha often stayed at and passed through the famous Pavarika Ambavan, which was the monastery at that time, and delivered a good number of discourses. In the process of imparting higher knowledge, these monasteries of Vihara were gradually transformed into Mahavihara, or center of higher knowledge, where the spread of knowledge was regarded as a noble and holy duty of the monks. Thus, it seems that Nalanda University, ancient Nalanda University or Nalanda Mahavihara, developed from a modest beginning as a place where a small group of monks lived life and of meditation and contemplation, to eventually emerge as a full-fledged center of advanced study and research. By 5th century AD, Nalanda took a shape of a Mahavihara with the patronage of Gupta kings, especially King Sakraditya. Here you can see in the slides, you know, an aerial view of the vastness of the Nalanda University. Nalanda was undoubtedly a great center of study of Buddhism, although the available texts of the 18 Theravada sects were thoroughly studied here, yet Nalanda was famous especially for the study of Mahayana Buddhism. But later on, esoteric Buddhism came as an offshoot of the Mahayana Buddhism, which was studied here both in theory and practice. Tantric Buddhism was the name given to the esoteric Buddhism, which otherwise called Tantrayana, Vajrayana, also developed. Whatever might be the name, that does not matter. The fact was that Buddhism in general was taught and practiced at Nalanda, following the age-old concept of pariyatti, theory, patipatti, practice, and pativedan, experience, thereby acquiring knowledge, both mundane and supramundane. Education plays a very important role in the growth and development of individual as well as the society. Education should nurture citizens to be ethical and mindful of the idea that the development of individual will lead to the development of the whole, whether it be family, community, state, nation, or the world. Character development should be a conscious process whereby students should become aware of the complexities of their minds, excuse me, and should also understand how their intrinsic desires, emotions, will, thought, and imagination could be understood and harmonized. This ideal of value education was achieved in Nalanda through the practice of universal teachings of the Buddha. The making of man was thus the main theme of education in the ancient monastic university of Nalanda. Nalanda Mahavihara had been a great center not only for imparting education, philosophy, metaphysics, logic, medicine, metallurgy, etc., but also had been a great center of training of Buddhist art, sculpture, including bronze, and culture, which were actively transmitted to different parts of the world throughout, to China, Tibet, Southeast Asia, including Bhutan, Indonesia, etc. It is indeed true to state that an institution is known because of its faculty and its staff and students. The personality of teachers play a great role in the development of the character and culturing the outlook of the student, which in totality leads to the development and rise of an institution. Nalanda made a great contribution to the arena of education, art, and culture by creating an environment of enthusiasm for the pursuit of both intellectual and spiritual upliftment. That is why students and scholars were attracted to Nalanda from far off countries and regions. The scholars from Nalanda Mahavihar played a significant role in disseminating and spreading and establishing Buddha's doctrine of love, compassion throughout the world. Reverberation of rich contribution of Nalanda Mahavihar, not only in the form of teaching of the Buddha, but different aspect of culture and society in the field of religion, philosophy, psychology, medicine, education, astronomy, metallurgy, etc., still continue to be felt throughout the world. Here you can see one of the images which was found in Nalanda and which is still there. Coming to the linkage with Nalanda and Bhutan. In the first millennia, Nalanda Mahavihar played a key role in playing the foundation of spiritual bond between India and Bhutan. Available historical and the cultural evidences suggest that people in Bhutan followed Buddhism and a shamanistic ritual before the advent of Buddhism in 8th century. Himalayan region was one of the most difficult to penetrate, virtually beyond the reach of ordinary humans. However, there emerged a great personality in India, Guru Padmasambhava of Nalanda, and also known as Guru Rinpoche, who laid the foundation for widespread expansion of the teachings of the Buddha in Bhutan and other Himalayan regions. It is said that Guru Padmasambhava visited the court of King Senda, King Sindhuraj of Chakara, Bhumthang, and cured the ailing King Senda. In order to subjugate the malignant spirit, Guru Padmasambhava left a body impression which can be seen at Kurje Kalakhang. Later, the next visit, Padmasambhava, king renounced all the worldly properties and things and became the disciple of Guru Padmasambhava. Acharya Padmasambhava is the most revered Acharya and is the link between Nalanda, India, and Bhutan, and continues to inspire people of both the countries. Friends, now I'll show you this Xuanzang Memorial. Xuanzang is important because of his contribution for the dissemination of the teachings of the Buddha and also for giving us documentation about the history and the culture of Buddha in India through his travelogue. Most Venerable Xuanzang's contribution in all these fields have been great. It was on the basis of this travelogue that I mentioned that Nalanda University, ancient Nalanda University was explored and excavated. The memorial, this is the site of the memorial. The memorial was also visited by His Majesty the King and the Queen of Bhutan in October 7th, 2014. So here you can see His Majesty being received at Nalanda. This is the memorial, and there is a statue of Xuanzang. This is the inner murals which His Majesty and the Queen saw. Then, concluding my talk, I would like to mention about the place Revalsar in Himachal Pradesh. Here you can see the lake and the background and the statue of Master Padmasambhava. Revalsar is an important Buddhist pilgrim site in the state of Himachal Pradesh related to Guru Padmasambhava. The natural lake at Revalsar is famous for its floating reeds, island, and fishes. It is situated 145 kilometers from Shimla, the capital of Himachal Pradesh. It is said that besides Buddhists, the place is also revered by Hindus and Sikh people. In the Buddhist lore, the lake was created by the great Guru Padmasambhava of Nalanda, who was an accomplished master, no doubt, from the 8th century, who came to this area to teach. The place is very vibrant even today for studying and practicing Buddhism in caves in the hills above the Sopema. At present, the caves are a place of pilgrimage for Buddhists from all over the world, and many disciples of the Padmasambhava live in the small huts and the ancillary caves around the main caves, living and practicing there for their entire life. Friends, once again, I thank you for giving me this opportunity to interact. And if you have any questions, I will definitely answer. Otherwise, you can also link with me, and you can send your questions or any queries about this. Thank you once again.
Thank you very much, Professor. Now we will open up the floor for the Q&A session. I'm sure we have a lot of questions. And to start it off, I'll start off with a question. And I believe this particular question, I will direct it to Mr. Seth. Plants and trees seems to be quite essential when it comes to talking about the life of Lord Buddha, especially the Bodhi tree and the trees in Kushinagar and the grass, obviously. Just curious, in Bodh Gaya, the actual tree where the Lord Buddha had meditated and gained enlightenment. I'm just curious as to what generation of that, is it the original tree, or what generation of the original tree is it?
No, thank you for the question. You're right. Trees, the Buddha was born under a tree. He was awakened under a tree. He died under a tree. So trees are very important in the Buddha's life and in our teachings. And I often think of the trees as our spiritual ancestors. In fact, the Bodhi tree, as you mentioned, was sitting or was there with the Buddha when he was awakened. So, and as I was offering in my talk, I think the tree helped him in his awakening. Now, the specificity of this particular tree, we don't know which generation it is, but we know that soon after Emperor Ashoka's passing away, we know that that tree died. One story is that his second wife, who was rather jealous of the tree, poisoned it with a mandu thorn, which killed the tree. We know that in about the 7th century, there was a rather strong Shaivite king who was quite opposed to the Buddha Dhamma, who cut the tree, the next tree, and in fact, so that was destroyed too. But a replacement tree was brought from Sri Lanka, where Sanghmitra, the daughter of Emperor Ashoka, had taken a tree in the 3rd century BC. So a replacement tree was brought from there and brought and planted in, so that's the 3rd generation. And then we know in 1876, that tree probably was hit by a lightning and it died. And in 1881, Alexander Cunningham, who was an archaeologist and became the first Director General of the Archaeological Survey of India, planted another tree. And that's the tree we have now, which is probably about, what, 130, 140 years old now, the one which is presently sitting. So it's the third or fourth generation, as we can see. But, it's still my teacher. The tree is my teacher. And it's interesting how this tree, which is sitting next to me in my meditation place, acts like a reminder for me of the awakening of the Buddha and the deep teaching of interbeing, as my own teacher Thich Nhat Hanh mentioned, the understanding of interconnected origination or interdependent origination. And thank you for that question.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Seth and Dr. Pant, for the very educative and moving presentation. I've learned a lot. I'd like to ask a question each to Dharmacharya and also to Doctor. To Mr. Seth, I would like to ask, I believe that Buddhism was a outbranch of Hinduism, which was already prevalent, which was already practiced at that time. So how different or similar is Buddhism to Hinduism? And I believe that Lord Buddha must have taken many of the teachings from Hinduism and maybe modified it, or he added something else. So if you could shed some light on that. And to Dr. Pant, I would like to ask that I would like to believe that Nalanda would have continued to flourish, given that there were so many Buddhist masters that came following. So what really led to the downfall or the decay of Nalanda? And why did it fall into ruins? Why did it not continue to flourish as it should have? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. I think there's a common misconception to me that Buddhism was an outspring of Hinduism. There was no such thing as Hinduism at the time. There were many schools. There were 16 different types of Shramanic or Brahmanical movements. There was a Brahmanical type of teaching, but there were also Ajivakas and people who were, as I said, the Mahavir, and there's people like Sanjaya Bellaputta, who was agnostic. So there were many, many different schools. And so I would say there would be a Brahmanical school and there would be a lot of Shramana schools. Shramanas are the wanderers. And so, in fact, the Buddha did practice and knew the Vedic texts, etc. And he then finds that that does not offer him the liberation that he's looking for. And that's why he visits different teachers. And he finds that what the Buddha's teachings are quite independent in a sense of the thinking of anatma, as I mentioned, to atma. This is a very fundamental difference. So yes, there are many concentration practices, for example, that he would have taken from the yoga, the yoga acharya, or some of the teachings he would have taken from the Upanishadic teachings. But actually, it is quite an independent awakening of teachings that he had. And so this is, I would say that there were independent schools, and the word Hinduism, of course, only comes about the 11th century. I think the Hindu Dharma, as you know, it was, or the Hindu culture was around the Indus. It was a Persian word, which became, from Sindhu, it became Hindu. They couldn't pronounce the her. And so it was a culture, and it had many, many, many different types of schools. So I wouldn't put it as Buddhism coming out of Hinduism. It is an independent stream from Brahmanism.
Excellency, I would answer your question about the fall of Nalanda and becoming ruins. You know, there are various views and various points which are there, but one of the point which is there is the immediate cause, we can say, was the onslaught of the invasion by the Muslims in the 13th century. But, you know, people say there are certain texts which mentions that people, the followers of Nalanda tradition, who were in Nalanda at that time, the monks, they also stopped practicing the way, the discipline which was given there. So as a result, it is said that, you know, the villages which were supporting Nalanda Mahavihara, they were not having faith towards those monks, because they neglected their practice. So that was also one of the cause. But mainly the immediate cause was the invasion of Bhaktiar Khilji, as it is mentioned, where the entire campus was ruined, and how the libraries, the great libraries of Nalanda, the three great libraries, they were burned down and plundered. So that was the main immediate cause for the downfall. And soon, once things were deserted, it took the shape of a mound, and you can see the ruins of Nalanda. And when, on the basis of Master Xuanzang's travelogue, they explored, and they started excavating, they found a beautiful complex which was there. And the present site which is there is only 10%, remaining. Still the site is under earth, and because the place is populated, so they have not excavated. But you can get an idea from what it is, that it must have been a magnificent university campus. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you very much. Anybody with a question?
So my question is about Vulture Peak, and I think it's directed to Dharmacharya Shantum Seth. It's a question on Vulture Peak. So I was just curious about the significance of Vulture Peak, and also the sutras and the sermons that came out of Vulture Peak. Where exactly is it in India, and is it a short trek? Can anyone visit? Like, I just find Vulture Peak quite fascinating.
Thank you for your question. Yeah, Vulture, I love Vulture Peak. It's a short walk, a very light incline upwards from in the town of Rajgir. It's actually the old city of Rajgir. It's in the outskirts of the old city. So in modern day Rajgir, you have modern day Rajgir, and then you have a large area for an archaeological forest area, and then you come to Vulture Peak, and you just walk up slowly. The significance is, of course, the Buddha loved it. It was his favorite meditation place. There are caves. When it rained, he sat there. He would often go there with his friends. But some of the sutras that were given there, the most famous sutras, are some of the Mahayana sutras that we hear about, which is the Heart Sutra, the Lotus Sutra, which is supposed to be given there. Of course, some scholars would say that they were not historically given by the Buddha. They were later teachings, which were then alluded to the Buddha. But some people believe that they were given by the Buddha and then kept as secret teachings to then be revealed later. But do go, don't delay. It's and I would say that when you walk on that path, it's not a very wide path. So you can really feel that you're walking exactly where the Buddha walked. And so just go in silence, really, each breath, just see whether you take 2 steps or 3 steps, feeling you're arriving with each step, and imprinting your own peacefulness and feeling the sublime nature and the peacefulness of the Buddha. And then sit there, watch the sunset, go for sunrise, watch the sunrise, just spend the whole day there, take your picnic. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next question, Venerable Sululepin has a question, and His Excellency, the Foreign Minister, will translate.
Again, thank you very much for those answers. This question is from Sululepin, Venerable Sululepin, who is from our central monastic body. And he would like to know, before the question, he states that all 3 sects, the Hinayana, Mahayana, and Vajrayana form of Buddhism, all originated from India. And today in Bhutan, all these 3 sects are being practiced. However, Venerable Lobin would like to know that of these 3 sects, is Vajrayana still being practiced in India? And if it is not, then what were the factors that led to it not being practiced in India? So maybe Dharmacharya Seth can answer this question.
No, thank you, sir, for translating the question. Yes, we tend to call it Theravada, Mahayana, and Vajrayana. And all three are being practiced in India. But, as Professor Pant was saying, or alluded to, that Buddhism pretty much died out of India by the 12th, 13th century. And so there's been very little thread of Buddhism carrying on. In fact, the only thread of Buddhism that really carried on was in the Himalayan region of Vajrayana Buddhism, Ladakh, Himachal, all that Lahore Spiti area, Arunachal. But there's been a revival of Theravada Buddhism, especially with the effect of Sri Lanka and Burma, especially in the eastern area, and Mahayana to a lesser degree, but in more recent times. In fact, I'm a practitioner of the Mahayana tradition. I'm from a Zen tradition. So I would say that Vajrayana there was a lot of Vajrayana all across South India, all across Orissa. Why did it disappear? Well, one of the great politicians of India said something which is a little controversial, but since you're a politician, I can say that. It was Dr. Ambedkar who said that the history of India is the struggle between Brahmanism and Buddhism. And this has been an eternal issue right through India. And I would say that when we even alluded to the destruction of Nalanda, when Xuanzang came in the 7th century, he said there was already a decline in the Buddha Dhamma, and I think the clash has been much before the Islamic invasions, and the decline of Buddhism starts much earlier than the 13th century, 7th century, 8th century. So I would say that the reason why Buddhism has died in India is partly because of this clash, and also the absorption of Buddhism, of many of the Buddhist teachings into the Hindu Dhamma. So, for example, many of the teachings of Advaita Vedanta or Advaita, which Shankara brought in, came from some ways Buddhist teachers. So I would say that this sort of understanding is important, that that Buddhism hasn't disappeared, it's got absorbed in, or some of the teachings have got absorbed in to the common Hindu Dhamma. And I would just like to add that I think it's important that we are not clashing. It's just that we are understanding the world in a slightly different way. So it doesn't have to be a clash, it's just coexisting, and that's been very much India's culture, that we have debate, we coexist, and we agree that there are different views of reality.
Les, thank you very much. Although I'm sure we have a lot of questions, but due to the lack of time, we will stick to the last two questions and have first question from the people who are watching on the net virtually. This is from Siddharth Mohanty. And the question is, I believe, is directed to either Professor or Mr. Seth. What exactly transcended the cycle of birth and rebirth when Buddhists didn't believe in a soul? So that is the question. So either Mr. Seth or Professor, you could take charge of that.
You know, this is a wonderful question. There is a text called, in Pali, it is called, it mentions about a dialogue between a king and a monk, where this question has been asked, that when there is no soul, then who takes rebirth? You know, in Buddhism, Buddha never talks about, he talks about anatta, but he talks about karma as, you know, karma is what it is said in Pali. It says, Chetana ahang bhikkhave kammang vadami. Volition itself is karma. Volition, so you can understand, Buddhism talks about chitta santati, the consciousness, the flow of consciousness, but it doesn't talk about soul. So, you know, this there is an example generally given in the text. It says that just like various, to make a cart, you know, we have different parts of that together, they make a cart. Similarly, you know, these 5 skandhas, the 5 skandhas, they make together, when they come, they make a human being. So, you know, the rebirth is because of the karma, and there is a flow of karma. So, and there is no soul is such. I hope this makes him clear.
Thank you, Dr. Pant. And I think there's a very interesting sutra given by the Buddha, Aniruddha. It's called the Anural Sutra. And Aniruddha asks the Buddha, will the Tathagat exist after he passed away, not exist after he passed away, neither exist after he passed away, both exist and not exist after he passed away. And the Buddha says, can you see me right now? I'm sitting in front of you. Can you define me in form, in feelings, in mental formations, in perceptions and consciousness, the 5 skandhas? And he said, I can't, because everything is always a constant flux. He said, if you can't get me now, if you can't define me now, where are you looking for me later?
Thank you very much. Wonderfully put there. We have time for one last question, and this question is from Dr. Tsongdan, President of the Royal Thimphu College.
To Dharmacharya, Seth, just a question. Over the last 10 to 15 years, there has been so much happening in the world in terms of looking into meditation, mindfulness, and as such, that started from His Holiness Dalai Lama's question to some of the psychiatrists and scientists saying, okay, why don't your research look into mindfulness, meditation? And if this is good, why don't you spread it to the world? And as such, today, I think there has been so much happening by looking into that kind of thing, from quantum physicists, psychiatrists, and some very, very highly intellectual people. And there has been so many publications there. And as such, they're looking at Buddhism in a non-sectarian sense, that Muslims, Christians, and whatever, they can practice this. So what, in your view, what would be the status in India from now on? Because that is where everything originated. So your say on that. Thank you.
No, thank you for that question. It's actually, it's a little bit of my life's mission right now, to bring mindfulness to school education. The reason I do that is because I feel it is a form of secular Buddhism. It is, the Buddha's teachings are more important to me than the Buddha as a religious person. I think what's important is his teachings, and they offer us liberation, happiness. And mindfulness, of course, as you know, was one of the Eightfold Path. Now the interpretation of, and we've known that mindfulness works, it's a mind training technique, and how to handle our emotions, how to handle our relationships, and of course, how to get to know ourselves. So whether in a meditative way or whether in a relational way. And I think the scientific community, especially neuroscience, has helped us a lot in the last 30 years, especially with the idea of neuroplasticity and now epigenetics. So what has happened in the modern day, the new gurus are the scientists, and the scientists have now given us their sort of stamp of approval, which we've known for 2,600 years, but we haven't done it with the experimenting of the mind, of the brain. There is a little confusion about what is the brain and what is the mind, and that's maybe a discussion for another time. But at least the experimentation on the brain has shown that mindfulness practices help with creating new neural pathways and creating a much better sense of well-being, much better pedagogical approach. And these are the pedagogical approaches developed by Buddha and in the Indic civilizational context. And I think that's why I feel that India and Bhutan can lead the world in these areas of education, combining our Buddhist understanding of mind with the brain sciences. And we've done programs actually in Bhutan with the Gross National Happiness Center. We had a mindfulness course about 4 years ago. We'd come there. We know that people there are interested very much in mindfulness, and so are we in India. And I would really encourage more of this, and showing the rest of the world from our South Asian heritage what traditional pedagogical approaches are of mindfulness, which actually the West is taking as a technique but we have to take as an embodiment, that we embody mindfulness rather than just take it as another sort of, add-on fix. It has ethics in it, it has Sangha in it, all these elements of the Buddha teachings, which should not be divorced out of mindfulness. So that's my little understanding, but I feel, yes, this is the new Dhamma in a way, the secular Dhamma, and this is the way we have to share it with the world. And anybody, Muslim, Hindu, Sikh, Isai, anybody can absorb that and finds it useful. And the results are incredible. The results are incredible for school children, for college children, and now we find the stresses and strains of young people are so hard. And I never learned these things as a kid, how to handle my fear, how to handle my jealousy, my anger. And these things have come to me later. And that's why I feel it's very important to teach this to young children. I'm very happy that there are many students in this audience today. And I would encourage you to look at our own heritage of the Buddha Dhamma, to see what mindfulness meant for the great acharyas, like Guru Rinpoche, etc., like the Shakyamuni Buddha, and how it translates today to the royal family. I know the royal family are very interested in the Buddha Dhamma. How is it translating into Buddhist society with gross national happiness? All the different types of ways that we can see mindfulness coming into our society without and secularizing, and then Bhutan bringing that to the world, like it has brought gross national happiness. It can also bring mindfulness. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Yes, we probably have a lot of questions, but I'm sure you could ask these questions directly to Mr. Seth or Professor. You could contact them through social media or through email if you have more questions. I have more questions, but we need to move on with the event. So now, at this point, let me invite Deputy Director General, Ms. Annabella Arya. Vote of thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Sangye, and that was a wonderful walk, I would say, a spiritual walk in the footsteps of the Buddha. It is indeed an honor for me to propose a vote of thanks on behalf of the Ministry of Tourism, Government of India. I would like to express my sincere thanks to Her Excellency, the Ambassador of India to Bhutan, for her keen interest and active involvement in organizing this virtual event to showcase the Buddhist heritage circuit in India to the people of Bhutan. I also take this opportunity to express our sincere thanks to His Excellency Dr. Tandi Dorje, Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs, Royal Government of Bhutan, for his esteemed presence and in contributing to the success of this virtual event. Our sincere thanks to Dharmacharya Shantum Seth and Professor Dr. Ravindra Path for sharing such interesting insights on Lord Buddha, the 8 great places associated with Lord Buddha, and the linkage between Nalanda and Bhutan, and the importance of Vulture. I would like to thank especially all the esteemed audience, including the youth of Bhutan, for participating in this virtual tour of the Buddhist circuit in India. And I'm sure that our esteemed panelists have inspired one and all to visit India and walk in the footsteps of the Buddha once the international flights to India resume. Last but not the least, I would like Mr. Shilo Hurao and his team of NGED, the entire team of the Embassy of India in Thimphu, and my team in the Ministry of Tourism, Mr. Rangarajan and Ms. Kanjam, and of course, not forgetting our Joint Secretary, Mr. Rakesh Kumar Verma, who has been our pillar, I would say, for all the cooperation and support in making this event a great success. Thank you and namaskar. Thank you.